Hello and welcome to the Momentum Theory Podcast. I'm your host, Dallin Malm. This podcast features conversations with athletes, artists, and entrepreneurs who use their success and influence to serve a purpose greater than themselves. My guest today went from going door to door selling pest control to sitting across the table from billion-dollar decision makers. The simplest way that he explains his success is realizing that the principles don't change. Make it all about the person across from you, learn their goals, and earn their trust through humility and clarity. Anybody who's had a chance to work with him, myself included, would describe him as an unstoppable force. He likes to move fast. He likes to conquer obstacles and challenge the status quo. He was part of the record-breaking sale of Fox Pest Control in 2023, after which he and his business partners stepped into a new arena, raising capital and buying multifamily real estate. Each year, he and his team meet with dozens of high-profile investors and family offices, and they study thousands of deals. Like the great investors of our time, him and his partners at the Wind River Group pass on almost every single deal they come across. This is in perfect harmony with Charlie Munger's philosophy, where he said, "My idea of shooting fish in a barrel is to drain the barrel first." In this conversation, you'll hear what he learned about finding and contributing to lasting business partnerships, even when emotions ran high. We'll talk about why he believes identity and priorities drive judgment, and the framework shift that changed his perspective on work, which is this: you don't do hard things now so that you can play later. No, you do hard things now so that you can make harder decisions later. As a side note, I titled this episode Audacity. It's a word that Winston Churchill often spoke aloud to himself as he walked about. People often heard him mutter, "Always more audacity, always more audacity, always more audacity," which was reportedly what he said to himself his entire life. For anyone interested in building a business, increasing their vision, or simply wanting to learn more about entrepreneurship, this episode is for you. Please enjoy my conversation with Christian Thorn.
Great moments are born from great opportunity.
You ask, what is our aim? Victory. Victory, however long and hard the road may be.
This will be remembered forever as the greatest day in the history of the Tour de France. You believe in miracles? Yes!
So you're one of the partners at the Wind River Group. You had the successful exit from Fox Pest Control. You and one of the founding partners, Mike Romney, you go on and you start this business where you're raising money, you're buying multifamily developments, and it's a new type of business. You're heavily in investing now. Since you're raising money, you're meeting with a lot of high-profile individuals or people that represent that family or that person's money. What have you learned about meeting with these type of people, and how would you recommend people approach building relationships with those kind of individuals?
Man, that's a great question. I would say more than anything, it's really fun. I mean, these are people that have been extremely successful for a reason, and so I've loved the approach and really been a benefactor of meeting with these people to just take the approach of, hey, what can you teach us? What can you, like you've been very successful. Talk to us about how you've been successful and the experiences that you've had. And that's been a really fun process because we get to be surrounded by extremely successful people. And I would say the overwhelming majority of them are extremely humble. There's very little pride. Every once in a while, you'll get someone that, thinks they are, God's gift to man, and maybe they are. But for the most part, everyone is extremely humble and kind and willing to share and give. And so it's been a really cool experience to get to know these people. I mean, approaching it from a relationship standpoint, what's so fun is there's not really much different if you're going to be going and, back in the days, recruiting a young 18-year-old, 19-year-old sales rep to go sell pest control versus going and recruiting, multimillionaire or billionaires investment into a project, you can actually, there's all the principles are very similar. It's all about relationships. How do you learn more about them? How do you make most of the conversation about them, their goals, what they're trying to accomplish? And then maybe at the end, so 90% of it's about them, maybe 10% of them is, hey, well, this might be how we could solve some of your problems and help you. But it's anytime I'm trying to go and forge a relationship, I'm trying to be 80-90% about that person and what their goals are, what they are hoping to accomplish in life, and then maybe a little bit of how the Wind River group can help them in their goals.
Is there a common thread that connects these guys from what you've observed, like maybe a key lesson you've learned, or what differentiates these guys from the crowd?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of them make decisions extremely quickly, and they are very resolute in their decisions. I would say that's one of the first things that comes to my mind. Most successful people that I've met, they can make decisions extremely quickly, and they're usually right. And even if they're not the right decisions, they're going to be the right decisions because they made the decision, if that makes sense.
Is it a move fast and break things kind of a model, like the way Facebook talks about it?
I don't know if that's necessarily 100% accurate, but I think it's they're just willing to make decisions quickly and not get bogged down by the lack of decision making. I think a lot of people find a lot of success just because they're moving and they're making decisions. And yes, I guess there are times when those decisions are going to break something, maybe to that comment. But for the most part, it's the better of two goods, and they're just making a decision to move forward.
So, but to develop that judgment is another thing, though. The best way that I've heard it is that you've probably heard this story. I share it a lot because I really like it. It's that story of Mozart where the 14-year-old comes up to him and says, "Hey, I want to create beautiful symphonies." And Mozart said, "Okay, well, are you in university?" "Yeah." He said, "Well, finish that, then go find a mentor, study under him, and then in 10 to 12 years, you'll be creating great symphonies." And he said, "But you were creating symphonies when you were my age." He said, "Yeah, but I wasn't going around asking people how to create great symphonies."
Yeah.
It's that process of, like, you've just got to go do it.
Yeah.
And then the judgment and the wisdom comes. Is that typically what you're finding in these people?
I think so. Yeah, most of them, they either came from nothing or, maybe they had some great starts, but they're just making it happen.
Yeah.
And figuring it out along the way, whether it started at a really small manner of making money and being successful, or if they were handed it on a silver platter. I think they're just getting after it.
That's your experience as well, right? When you started at Fox, everybody at the company knew that you were the guy who came out swinging, because you had typically a first-year guy comes on and they have an average to mediocre first year, and if they can stick with it, typically they do a lot better. In your experience, though, you jumped in and you had recruited a huge group of guys, like 20 guys, was it?
Yeah, I think it was 25, 26 guys
okay,
that first year.
Yeah, which nobody does. The second and third year guys have a hard time getting to 5 to 10.
Yeah.
So you come in with that many guys, and what was it about your mindset that gave you the juice, the energy to jump so far ahead?
Oh,
it's kind of your personality type, Christian.
Yeah, so that's I would say, like, maybe if we even go further back, I'll tell you some stories about my childhood that might answer your question better. So I remember I loved to skateboard growing up, and the problem was there was two problems. Number one is the skateboard wouldn't fit in my locker at school, and number two, the bus driver wouldn't allow me to have a skateboard on the bus. So what did I do? Because this is also this personality trait can be really good, but it also can be really bad.
Okay.
So I just made my own skateboard that would fit in my backpack that could also fit in a locker, and I cut it up. So I would walk on the bus, and a little bit in spite of the bus driver, be like, "You don't know it, but I have a skateboard," and that was against the rules. So there's no obstacle that was going to get in my way of being successful to what I wanted, and I mean, there's a bunch of other experiences. Like, I remember early on, I was probably 8 years old, maybe 9, and I wanted a dirt bike bad. And my family was like, or my parents were like, "Well, if you earn enough money, you can get one." And so what did I do? I started raising money and earning money, but I also started to look at the Canadian to US dollar exchange, thinking, oh, I could get a dirt bike faster if I just go and buy it in Canada.
How
and
old
ship
are
it
you?
here. I was like 8 or 9.
How does that come to your mind?
I don't even know.
Are you the oldest in your family?
No, I have an older brother.
I mean, but he didn't have anything to do with this.
So I'm like, so that's just a little bit of my personality that like, you know, there were never any obstacles to me getting what I wanted. And like I said, that could be really bad because it could be a very defiant of authority type personality. So even I have to keep that in check to make sure that I'm not going and defying authority. But that I'm keeping that, you know, in line. I mean, my wife always gives me a hard time that she thinks I'm above the law and that I can get away with things. But sometimes I can, not necessarily the law, but like I always wanted to fly planes.
Yeah.
And my whole life since I was a little kid. And so when we got married, she knew this, and she just knew it was only a matter of time before I went and, you know, learned to fly planes, got planes. And that was a really, you know, awesome experience. Even selling pest control, I never had a 0 day. We called it a bagel day on the door selling pest control from my first day to my last day selling. Well, maybe my last day isn't over. Maybe I'll go out on the doors again. But I've never not sold an account. And part of that drives to that personality that I have of there's just no obstacles in the way of me going and being successful. So yeah, it's a personality trait. Like I went into Fox and I knew to be successful, I needed to recruit a lot of people.
Yeah.
And so nothing was going to stand in the way. I even think when I started competitive skiing when I was 13 years old. And I was late to the game, way after a lot of people. Most kids in Park City will start that really early. And I remember sitting in the first big group parent meeting, and they were talking about the competitions that year. And I think I even started like midway through the year. And they talked about how the Junior Olympics was coming up that year, and these are the things you have to do to qualify and accomplish that. And it was very unlikely that coming in that late in my early childhood, also halfway through a season, to be able to go and qualify. And I was like, I'm going to do it. Like, I'm going to make it happen. And my dad, I remember he was like, well, look, like, I don't think you can, but I made it happen. And I just did what it took to go and accomplish that and went to that Junior Olympics my first year. And so it's a little bit of my personality of like, if I have a goal that I really believe in and want to accomplish, there are no obstacles that are going to get in the way of me, you know, accomplishing it.
So I think that character trait is going to be more common than not when you're in this echelon of high-performing people and high-achieving people. But the nature of growing and developing a company or an organization or raising money is you have to work with people who don't have that. The majority of people don't have that instinct to them or that desire or the boldness, whatever you want to call it. And this is really good. At your time at Fox, you had recruited the team, you were successful. And at Fox Pest Control, one of the unique opportunities is for people who are really committed and who are growing and recruiting good teams and have proven that they can sell, they have the opportunity to buy into the company essentially in sort of a franchise-esque model where you partner with the founders and you open a new market. But you still have to bring the teams, you have to bring the revenue, you have to perform for a number of successful years in a row. You're working, so by definition, you're going to be recruiting and working with guys who probably don't have that it factor. So how do you lead them to success? How do you lead or teach someone that didn't have, and maybe it's good that you didn't recruit a bunch of Christian Thorns, because the branch might have burned to the ground. But so how do you lead groups that are different than that and who don't have what you have?
Yeah, I don't know if I have the perfect answers, but I would say you just kind of meet them where they're at. And there's a great quote that I've kind of lived a lot of my life by from President Monson, Thomas S. Monson. And he said, ours is the responsibility to rise above mediocrity to competence, from failure to achievement. Our task is to become our best selves. One of God's greatest gifts to us is the joy of trying again, for no failure ever need be final. And that's so I would say my approach to that was looking and taking people where they were and then just helping them to get a little bit better wherever they were, and just trying to inspire and lift and build people to just rise from mediocrity to competence, to have accountability, to see what their goals were. It really fell into the same, recruiting structure of, hey, let's make this 90% about you and what are your goals and what do you want to accomplish. It's not about me as the leader. It's about you and what you want to accomplish, and how can I, as a leader, hold you accountable, help inspire you, help lead you to get to the next level.
So without naming names, what was your success rate in that? Good mentality, good framework. You've worked with hundreds of people. What would you consider the success rate on that?
It's a good question. Success in the sense where they got better from where they were.
Yeah.
I mean, it's pretty high. Like I'd say if you can get somebody, especially in a Fox Pest Control type of environment where they're going to move them, their wife, maybe their family across the country and kind of burn the boats. Once they're there, they're usually pretty willing to get better. And so I'd say it's pretty high. You'll every once in a while have a kid that is wanting to bail, and he maybe knocks doors for a couple hours and then heads home.
Sure.
And there's so many extenuating circumstances that could cause that, but most of the time people are pretty willing and humble to get better and to change. And I would say that really drives to the fact of culture of an organization. Even at the Wind River Group, we really believe that if we have more leaders in our organization, we will be more successful and have more momentum. The more leaders you have, the more momentum you have as a company. And so if you are hiring the right people, if you're going after the right people right from the start, that are willing and humble and eager and talented, I think it's more about developing leaders. And leaders aren't people with positions. Leaders are people that have influence. And so if you can create people of influence, your organization's going to have incredible momentum.
Was that taught to you first by Jason Thompson or Mike Romney and Bryant White when you first started? What was your first example?
Yeah. I'll maybe back up a second, because this is a big thing for me. Look, like I have had some successes in my life, but it is only because of the people that I've been around, like 100%. So there's a great verse in Deuteronomy that I love that really teaches this. It says, "And houses full of good things, which thou fillest not, and wells digged, which thou diggest not, vineyards and olive trees, which thou plantest not. When thou shalt have eaten and be full, then beware lest thou forgettest the Lord." So it's this principle that, look, you stand on the shoulders of giants of those around you. It's the principle that we all have drunk from wells we did not dig and warmed ourselves by fires we did not build. Like that is, if I could put anything on my life, that is it. It's because I've been around very successful, very highly efficient people, and I've been able to glean just a little bit of advice and knowledge from them. And that even started early on. I have so much credit to give to my parents. They moved us to Park City when we were little, and my mom especially, she always says we wanted to move to Park City so you could be surrounded by very successful people, and number two, that you'd have to fight for your testimony of Christ, because in Utah there's a lot of faith here, and in Park City you have a lot of influence of other people that maybe don't believe in God or have as much faith, and
because so many have moved in from out of state.
Yeah, most likely. And so it was a great experience for me to grow up in an environment where I had some of the most successful people in the country as leaders and mentors, and people that I could turn to that would give me advice and pull me aside. And even throughout my life, I even have a meeting tomorrow with an early leader in my life that I still meet with regularly, and he gives me advice and knowledge, and I so appreciate those. So that started early for me, but absolutely coming into Fox, look, there were so many great principles taught by Mike and Bryant on leadership and personal development, and and look, we stole pretty much everything, all these teachings from other people.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the John Maxwells of the world that teach such great leadership principles, but also tie it into the gospel of Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
And
all 18 core values were
yeah,
hijacked.
I think we stole all of them.
I think like 15 of them are from Dave Ramsey.
Yeah. So, but that's okay. And it just actually probably proves the point more that, look, we all stand on the shoulders of giants.
Yeah.
I've just been so lucky and blessed to have great business partners, have great mentors, great people around me that I've been able to maybe start, you could say, almost at a higher playing field because of those influences. And anyway, I've just been extremely grateful for that. And then absolutely, look, I mean, when we first started my first branch at Fox, I mean, in 3 years, we grew to about $10 million of annual recurring revenue. You learn a whole bunch in practice where you are making the decisions on your own in that process. But the environment was there. The culture was created. It was a fairly safe environment to go and learn some hard lessons, but also grow incredibly because of the sacrifice that, Mike had given for years, that Bryant had given for years, the experiences that Jason's had in his life. And so we just, I would say, all of the success and things that I've learned, I've stolen from everybody else. I'm not very creative. I don't know if I have a whole bunch of new ideas. Most of it has been given. And I definitely recognize that.
You talked about hard lessons learned. Can you speak to some of those?
Oh, yeah. I mean, look, like I remember, so we flipped houses for a while, and we found a house we really liked. We wanted to flip it. We bought it, but we were going to live in this one. And it was a disaster. Like, it was a dump. And been in the market for forever. We move in, and I have my wife and my new baby. And we literally move in. The carpet lasted 15 minutes of us being in the house. Like, it was just disgusting. The very next morning, I jump on a plane to go start our branch in Boston and leave my wife and my new baby in this house that's disgusting. Like, you just wouldn't want to live there. I mean, you open the oven and there's a dead mouse in the crease of the oven.
Oh my gosh.
So I leave my wife and my new baby and I go to start this company. So there's stress, right? There's a lot of people relying on you, and we get out to the area, and very quickly, and anyone that's started a business can understand this, you can get bogged down by the tasks of the business. You know, hey, I want to make this a good experience for my employees, so I'm going to do all these little unique tweaks and presentations, and I want to make them feel really welcome. I want to have a good culture, and hey, this isn't maybe perfect, but let's work on this. And I got bogged down by these tasks of working on the business. And it was such a clear realization. My anxiety was just building the whole time that, look, like, you can work on tasks and different projects, but if there's no business, if there's no revenue, none of that stuff matters.
Absolutely. People get that turned around.
Yeah.
They think about, there's the mission. Like, I want the purpose of this business is we're going to fund some good cause somewhere in the world, or we're gonna bring people around this great culture. But one of the things that we teach, we've talked a lot about more recently, is there's 5 functions of management.
Yeah.
Then the first one is you have to sell the business. If you don't sell it, you have no customers, you have no revenue. Then you have to complete the service. So you have to actually deliver on what you sold. Then you have to collect the money, and then you manage your expenses and you mitigate risk. And then, and only then, can you develop your people. You can't develop your people if it's risky and unknown, if you're not collecting any of the money, if you can't even close what you've sold, and if you don't have any customers in the pipeline.
Yeah, it's so funny. You get it backwards. So I'm going through all of that, and then it was in just one day. So we're just talking about the first day of this business, and I'm like, what am I doing? And so I told so Chris Call, which he was out there with me, and I'm like, Chris, just take me to a neighborhood so I can go and sell some pest control, because if we don't have revenue and if we can't sell here, none of this matters. And so he drives out. It's like 7 or 8 o'clock at night, maybe 7 we started. And anyway, luckily I was able to sell somebody, and we were able to service them.
You've never
that
had a
night.
0 day.
Never had a 0 day. And I got a picture of that house in the dark that we're servicing the first day that we were, out in Massachusetts starting this business. And that taught me some things. So you ask about like, what were some of the hard things? Well, that was a lesson I learned that's really helped shape some of the decisions that I've made over time. And especially now in the Wind River Group, it's really easy to get bogged down with all of those other things. And don't get me wrong, those things are good and important. And it's important to develop people and teach culture and leadership. And those things have to happen. But if there's no business, there's no people.
Yeah.
So sometimes when people think I'm going to put relationships first, they think, well, I just need to go and help people. And, and it is true. If you help enough people, you'll never have to worry about money. However, if you haven't created the business model and gone through that structure and proved the model and built a business, you're not going to have the people. And so sometimes you have to make decisions that are difficult to help the business be successful so that you can provide for people. And sometimes that gets convoluted in decision-making early on in business.
Yeah.
So maybe that's one. There's probably a bunch more, but hopefully that answered your question.
Can I ask you about a specific one?
Sure.
You might know what the one I'm going to ask about. There was a time, and I want to talk a little bit more about how you have developed yourself and how you approach partnerships in business right now, because you've been on both sides. You were admitted into a company, so to say.
Yeah.
And then after the successful exit, you chose your partner and you built the table to bring other people to, right? I remember a certain time, this is during COVID, reps were being spread pretty thin. You partnered with Jason Thompson, who I've had on the podcast previously, and Jason has a lot of markets. He had partnered in a lot of branches, and they were spread thin in a lot of them. And reps, they needed to put revenue in certain branches to help them grow through this hard time. And since you and Jason were partners in a few branches at the time, there was like this shared rep mentality that they're both of our guys, right? And since you both kind of had claim to them, you wanted them in Boston and Providence, and he needed them in Chicago or somewhere else. And it meant that one branch would have to go without, not for the whole summer, but one branch was going to fail to meet its big targets that you had worked all year for. You remember this. We were sitting in Brian's office and we're talking about it. What can you tell me about that experience and what you learned from that?
That's a great experience. I didn't remember that you were in the room.
Well, you want to know why I remember?
Yeah, why?
Is I remember you expressing frustration. I'll let you give it detail. I literally remember your hands were not closed into fists, but your fingers were curled up like this, and you were like grinding the knuckles of your fingers together. I remember your jaw was clenched and your teeth were gritted, and you were, like I said, I'll let you fill in the details. And then Bryant turned to me and said, "Dallin, what do you think we should do?" And I remember, and then you looked at me, and it wasn't personal, but I remember you just looked at me with like, what are you going, like, yeah, why don't you tell me what I'm going to do? And it didn't feel malicious or anything, but I remember feeling so stupid. I was like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Like, why don't you guys figure this one out? What do you remember from that day?
Yeah. So I'll maybe preface that by telling some decisions that I made before then. So when we were starting those branches, it was me, Mike, and Bryant, and we were moving forward. And later on, it was the opportunity to bring Jason in as a partner. And I would say the decision was fairly easy. However, it was a decision of, okay, well, I'm going to give away, part of the pie, and is it worth it? Are we going to go and accomplish more together than we could without each other? And that was a big question. Like, Can we really do that?
Yep.
And ultimately I came to the decision. I mean, I loved Jason. He inspired me. He was a great partner. And we made the decision that, okay, yeah, let's do this all together.
You had already worked for Jason for years.
Yeah. Just the prior year, I had sold in one of his offices and got to know him and knew he was extremely successful. And I just, anyway, so I felt like, okay, might be a smaller piece of the pie, but hopefully we'll have a bigger pie. It was fairly simple in that decision making. Now, I will say, when I think about partnerships, I really believe if you can approach a partnership and ask the question, what can I give versus what can I get? I think you will be extremely successful. So often in business and other relationships that I've seen, people are so constantly focused on, well, what am I going to get from this?
Yeah.
And that sets you up to fail right from the start, because partnerships, you give each other grace, you work through certain things that are hard and difficult, and ultimately at the end of the day, you have to put your pride on the shelf in a partnership if you want it to be successful. And you also have to ultimately have a respect for each other that you can do that. And even if you disagree with a decision, that you can disagree while also being aligned. And that's a really important principle that I think some people might have struggles with, especially when you think about loyalty. And so there's times where you can disagree, but you're always going to be in alignment, and have a counsel of that and a camaraderie behind that. And so I just think it's important as you go into those partnerships to think, what can I give versus what am I going to get from this? And some of the most successful partnerships I've seen people take that approach. Look, and we can talk about that for a long time. You're asking about a very specific situation. Man, there was a lot of emotion. It was a really hard time. It was a time where I wasn't making any money and having to support a family. And I had gone and worked for a whole year to develop and recruit and train these teams. And Jason and I worked extremely well together. I learned so much from Jason, and I hope he learned maybe a thing or two from me. And we worked extremely well together. So we did almost all of our recruiting together. But you're right, at the end of the day, he had other obligations to branches before mine, but he had spent all the time working in our branch and recruiting for our branch because, man, we work well together. We had fun together.
Yeah, there's momentum there too.
Yeah, so the day of reckoning comes, which I didn't anticipate, I wasn't prepped for, and in a moment, I'm like, all that work is gone. And man, I remember some of those emotions and the feeling of feeling let down and frustrated and concerned. And a couple things prevailed in that moment. Number one, the feeling of abundance, that there was enough to go around. Part of that comes from that belief that I had that, look, the only reason I was successful is because of the people around me, the gifts that God had given me. And so who am I to, stand in the way of making some changes, because it's not mine to begin with. And so I remember feeling that feeling of abundance, that there's enough to go around, even though it was a very difficult thing and I disagreed with some things. Mm-hmm. I could get in alignment and move forward and make decisions that were maybe not necessarily in my best interest, but the best interest of the partnership. And those were some difficult times, but I just believed, I think a lot of that comes to understanding your identity and understanding who you are and what you've been given. And I believe that all that I am and all that I have, all my skills come from God. So anything that I have, I'm a steward of. And I actually am not in control. As much as I like to think, especially with my personality traits, that I'm in control, ultimately at the end of the day, I'm not in control. God's in control. And He has all control. So when I think I'm in control in my business, I'm not really. And that drives some of my decision making, especially in really hard circumstances, to kind of let good prevail.
That's one of my favorite stories. That principle that you shared is in one of my favorite stories of Hubie Brown talking about being a farmer in the field and cutting down the currant bush. And the currant bush says, "Why have you cut me down? Like, I've worked, like, how could you do this to me?" And he said, "I am the gardener here. And that I needed to cut you down so that you could grow to reach your potential." And he said that same farmer, and Hubie Brown's speaking of himself, he was in the military at the time, and he was drafted. And after years of military service, he was denied a massive promotion that he was well deserving of, simply because of his religious affiliation. And he said, I came, the whole train ride home was in silence. I came home and I threw my hat on the ground and I yelled at the heavens. I said, how could you do this to me? How could you cut me down? And he said, I heard a voice, and it was my own voice. And it spoke to me and said, I am the gardener here, and I am willing to cut you down so that you can become the greatest measure of your creation. That's a cool principle, Christian. It's rare in the world of business. I've been talking about this for years, and I gave a presentation on this a few months ago at the company, but the mindset of possessions, where in the Good Samaritan, I love the different mindsets that are presented. And this is one of the many things you can take from that parable. The first is, on the road to Jericho, he falls amongst thieves who believe what's yours is mine and I'll take it. And we're all born with that belief. All of our kids have that belief. And unfortunately, a lot of adults still have that belief. Then you have the Levite and the priest that pass by. And they say, what's mine is mine and I'm going to keep it. And that is where the majority of adults live. I've worked really hard for this, and I'm going to choose what to do with my own money and my own time, my own influence. The Good Samaritan comes by, and he says, what's mine is yours, and I'm going to give it. And the parable ends there. John Maxwell taught this great insight on this, and he introduced a fourth mindset. That's what's mine is not mine, and I'm going to manage it. And when you think about that, and when that principle sets in, that it becomes the only option. It becomes the only way. And it goes just in line with what you were saying. None of this is mine, and I'm not in control. Therefore, I'll manage it to the best of my ability, and one day I'll give an accounting for it, and if it gets taken away, it gets taken away. But in a way, doesn't it kind of relieve some of the pressure?
Absolutely.
A lot of the pressure.
Yeah. Yeah, look, like, I just assume that my success is not alone in the results of my own effort. Like, automatically. Like, and I do think that, and all those examples and all those stories, the Good Samaritan, I mean, it's because he knew who he was.
Yeah.
And I think the more we can understand who we are, that and the stewardship that we've been given, like my wife and I talk about this often, our kids are not our own. Like, they're given to us. And we have a stewardship over them, and we'll give an accounting of how we decide to raise and oversee our kids. Mm-hmm. And we just believe that we will give that accounting to God. And so, without getting too much into it, I just believe if you understand and can have a better understanding of who you are, who you really are, on a spiritual level, and why we're here, some of those decisions become easier. And don't get me wrong, that was an incredibly difficult situation.
Yeah.
And it was hard, and I didn't like it. And however, I grew a lot through that. And I just am a big believer that all things are spiritual before physical. And so all spiritual laws understood and lived will help you excel in business. I believe that.
That's one of the reasons why you're not a big fan of business books. Not that you don't like them,
Yeah.
but whenever I ask you, what are you reading? You're always reading like a gospel book or something. And I'm like, well, have you read Warren Buffett? That stuff's pretty good. You had made this comment to me the other, that really stuck with me. You're like, it's all the same principles, except this one's just more true. And so why would I waste time reading those other books,
Yeah, I mean, my wife and my friends do give me a hard time often, because that's what I love. I love reading gospel books and reading the scriptures and looking for insights in those. Like,
Yeah.
if I have extra time, I'm going to read that before I read any other book. And it hasn't always been that way. That's kind of developed and changed over time.
Yeah.
But I'm so fascinated to go and read some of the brightest minds that I know and how they lived the gospel of Jesus Christ and what decisions they made in their life. Because ultimately, some of those people did incredible things and had extremely good judgment in making decisions.
Yeah.
And so if I can get some insight into their lives and how they made decisions and how they decided to put God first in their life and prioritize that, and if I could glean even just a little bit of it, man, it's going to help me a lot, because I need all the help I can get.
Well, let me switch gears on you here. after Fox was acquired in 2023, you were part of the group that left, and you wanted to go do something else with your life. So I want to circle back in just a second to this concept of stewardship that you brought up earlier, because now you're dealing with people's money and their trust and relationships. But before we get there, you were at this opportunity where I think at the time of the acquisition, it was not obvious to you what you needed to be doing with your time, and you were probably talking with a lot of people, taking a lot of meetings. It would be interesting to hear a little bit about that. But my question is, what was not obvious to you until after you decided to take the leap and start what would become the Wind River Group with Mike and Jason?
I was grateful for some very clear direction very early on. And if I hadn't had that direction, it would have been a very difficult decision of what I was going to do next.
Early on in the process or earlier in your life?
Early on in the process.
Okay.
So, we sold Fox, and very quickly, I knew that I wasn't to continue in pest control. And I knew that there were other things for me to go and do, and I was excited about that. And I didn't know what those were. And I would say one of the things that I've been blessed with in life is opportunities that are presented in front of me. I feel like I have a good eye to see what's a good opportunity and what's not, and then to make decisions and kind of make those happen. So I'm just a big believer of if there's a great opportunity in front of you, you should just go all in and give it everything you have. For instance, I was down at the University of Utah. The plan was to be a doctor, by the way, and I missed that mark by quite a ways. So I'm doing all my pre-med classes. I'm in my organic chemistries, anatomies, physiology, all those great classes. And I'm like halfway through a semester, and there's this opportunity to get into real estate. And there was this kind of course and some people and a good just timing. And it's good and bad. I went all in. I literally, over a week's time, dropped out of school and went all into real estate.
When you say course, you're talking about an online course. Mm-hmm. This wasn't at the U.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was an online course, separate from the university.
Yeah.
But I was enrolled at the University of Utah.
Yeah.
And, well on my way. And
how far into your education were you?
Yeah, I have like 3 or 4 more semesters left if I wanted to graduate.
So what slapped you in the face so hard to put that all aside and to lose it all?
Yeah.
Or at least lose the trajectory.
ADD? I'm not sure. No, I just think it comes to the fact that I've been given a lot and a lot of great opportunities, and I just have found success in taking those opportunities. Now, you have to balance that because you don't want to go and put a lot of work into something and then just walk away.
Yeah.
But I started to analyze just what was important to me in my life, where I was going in my life, what were my desires and goals. And I realized I could get there in other ways than being a doctor. And so there was a lot of things that led up to this, but it was a very short window where I made this decision, and I go and start into the real estate market, and we started flipping houses and did extremely well. And that ultimately was the catalyst probably to get me to come and be a partner at Fox. I think if I had not made that decision, I would have stayed, I would have become a doctor, and I'd be,
boring.
Yeah. Just kidding. Shout out to all the doctors out there. No, it's a great profession. But that was the catalyst for me to then have other opportunities. And we flipped houses for years as we were starting Fox and having some great experiences there. But I share that because as we are selling Fox, there's some great opportunities on the table of what I could go and do, and we could go and do with my family. And I received really clear direction what not to do. And so that helped.
Okay.
But I didn't know what it was going to look like. And I just started taking steps in a direction. I knew I wanted to get back into real estate. That was, I think, a pretty sure thing. I just didn't know what that was going to look like. Am I going to go and start to acquire single family homes? Am I going to go and be a developer? Am I going to go and, buy storage units or multifamily apartments? I had no idea what it looked like. I just knew I was going to start going in that direction. And then little by little conversations started to happen. People got placed in our lives. And, ultimately Mike and I decided that we were going to start a real estate company. And
Was there a moment where he came to you or vice versa and said, hey, we should really think about doing something together?
It was so natural to have conversations because we had just gone through this life-changing kind of event. And so we were just talking often, and it was really natural and normal. There was no pivotal decision-making time.
Yeah.
It was just pretty natural and normal.
Do you suffer from shiny object syndrome?
Oh, shiny hobby syndrome,
Shiny
probably.
hobby, okay.
A little bit, but not, maybe a little. I do get excited about the new fun thing, for sure.
Sure.
But I love hobbies, so.
Do you know Dan Clark? Does that name ring a bell?
I don't think so.
There's a book about him that Michael Lewis wrote called The New Thing, and he created Netscape and what ended up becoming WebMD. He had shiny object syndrome, but like he had like the Midas touch, and because he made like 4 separate billion-dollar companies, you know. It's funny. So there's levels to this, I guess. Sometimes it works out.
Yeah.
So in the Wind River Group, let's shift back to this topic of stewardship. So you are handling people's money. You need people to write you big checks to buy these properties. You're building relationships. You've built your team. You've partnered with Mike Romney, who you love and trust, and I do as well. How do you view stewardship over other people's money and trust, and where do you think others generally get it wrong when it comes to those things?
It's a good question. I don't know if I could. Well, I don't know if I necessarily have some things on where other people get it wrong, but a lot of my approach is saying I hold myself to a pretty high level of accountability on the decisions that I'm making, ultimately because I believe the ultimate stewardship is to God. That's a higher stewardship than any individual person. And as I've grown in that relationship, my capacity for stewardship has definitely increased, because ultimately I know it's.
What do you mean by that? Your capacity for stewardship?
Well, I just believe that my stewardship that I'm going to give to God is higher and weightier than any stewardship that I'd ever give to man.
Okay. Like accountability?
Accountability.
Is that another word for it?
Yeah. And so anyway, that's more kind of breaking down like how I think about it. But ultimately, look, like when people trust us to go and invest their dollars into properties, they're putting a lot of trust in us and our organization and who we are and what we've accomplished. In these type of projects, the real estate absolutely matters, but who's running the organization and who's making the decisions and the team that are actually driving things forward almost matter more. And so I just believe if each of us as employees and at our company can have an incredible high level of accountability and stewardship to the decisions that we're making, ultimately the stewardship that we have to the people who are giving us their money is, I don't want to say easy, but it's inevitable and natural. And we feel a strong stewardship there because our own personal levels of stewardship are so high already on the decisions that we're making. So we try and make the best decisions that we can with the best information that we have, understanding things happen, but and then we just ultimately try and be as clear and as transparent and insightful and involving as we can with our partners.
One of the hallmarks of what you guys do is you really like to get into the weeds. You do a really thorough job. Like, how many deals did you look at last year?
Yeah, I don't know, 1,200 deals, somewhere around there, and we bought one.
That's awesome.
Yeah, man, our team was definitely getting frustrated with us because there was a couple deals we probably could have bought, but we were pretty disciplined.
Yeah, well, that in itself is an interesting hallmark. I think Warren Buffett's longest time he's gone without making an investment at Berkshire was 6 years.
Wow.
I mean, could you imagine 6 years of sitting on your cash? I was at the shareholder meeting last year where he announced his retirement, and they announced that they were sitting on, I want to say they're sitting on, I'm going to get this wrong, but hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars of cash. I think the number was $320 million in cash. Now that I say that, I actually think it might have been like billion, like 300 billion. I don't know.
A lot of money.
It's an insane amount of money, like more money than is just smart to hold on to. And during the shareholder meeting, somebody asked them a question about that, like, why aren't you deploying this capital? And Warren Buffett just made this great comment. He just said, we will never, ever be pressured to spend our money. And he said, and if you don't like it, you can sell your shares to me. I'll happily buy them. And given his track record and what they've built at Berkshire, there's something really interesting about that. Not only to be in the position to be that patient, but he says inevitably a once in a lifetime opportunity will come up, and we will be the only company that can take advantage of it, and we plan on exploiting it heavily. Really interesting. So
I love that mindset. I mean, yeah, he's way wiser than I am. However, I think we try and do similar principles. So
how do you battle the friction and the pressure to move your money faster than you have in the past? And I know I'm sure every year won't be just a one property year, but there's still going to be pressure if you're still exercising that same principle of discipline.
Yeah, I mean, look, like in the last 18 plus months, we've bought $130 million worth of real estate. So it's not like we're doing nothing.
Yeah,
and they're big deals, but you have to make sure you don't miss on these opportunities. And so I would say Mike and I both, and to Mike's credit a lot as well, is look, we're not going to do deals to do deals. And if we have to go and fund the company out of our own pocket for years, we're going to do that. And a lot of groups that do what we do get into tricky situations where they're forced to do deals because they're going to close up shop if they don't do deals.
Yeah.
And I've just appreciated that.
Well, there's a vanity
wisdom.
Metric.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
We would so much rather do the right deals and do fewer deals than do tons of deals that end up going bad. And look, like, we try just not to miss on our decision making. Even at Fox, it was really a great experience. We had over 30 branches over 15 states. Very, very few, and you could say went poorly.
Yeah.
Right. Most of them were very successful, and part of that is decision making. It's who you're doing business with. It's the people and the processes and the product that you're actually ultimately going and doing. But I think a lot of people love to diversify, and they love to spread it over a ton of different opportunities, knowing that a lot of things are going to go bad. I just don't know if that's my personality.
Sure. I
would so much rather do a very few select things, and maybe that's not the right approach, but that's how we've approached a lot of things. Is we want to make sure we're doing the right deals, making the right decisions, and we can make fewer decisions, but we hope that they're the right decisions. Yeah.
Well, you and Warren Buffett agree on a lot. I know you've read a little bit on him, but that's exactly his mindset too. He doesn't like diversifying. There's this, and it's really painful when you miss a big opportunity like that, and you see other people that are going all in, or they were just wise. Charlie Munger, exactly along with what you were saying. Charlie's wisdom is so good. One of just the wisest businessmen to ever walk the earth. But he said, our job at Berkshire is not to be smart. He says, we just can't afford to be stupid. He said, and you wouldn't believe how difficult it is to not be stupid.
Well, you got to give him some credit because it is hard sometimes. I mean, look, like when we were building Fox, how often was it that we were constantly looking at another company doing something that seemed like they were winning faster and better than us?
Yeah.
And it was like, man, should we be doing that? Like, should we be making some decisions like that? And ultimately, at the end of the day, we just stuck to our principles and we did business how we did business. And now, long term, it's really clear to see who the winners were. And I say that humbly, but the people, the processes we had, the culture that we had, the decisions we made, we stuck to those principles. And long term, it was extremely successful. And I just believe that. I think over a long period of time, if you can stick to your principles, you're gonna find great success rather than giving on a couple of principles because of the exciting opportunity or what other people are doing. I mean, there's even deals in real estate where we analyze every deal that we go and make offers on, every deal that we don't offer on, and then we follow it. So we get to go see, okay, how much did somebody else pay for this? What was their mindset? How did they make decisions? And it's really easy to be like, okay, well, number one, we want to learn from everybody. So we're very humble so we can take a look. But at the same time, you don't want to say, well, just because they're doing it that way means that's how we should do it.
Yeah.
And just because everyone else is doing something doesn't mean that's the right way. But we keep an open mind and learning. And so you just have to be disciplined in what you believe and the decisions that you're making, and try and not veer too far away from that.
When you're looking at the buying side of investing in properties, what are the common mistakes that you've seen other people make?
Yeah. Look, real estate is such a long process. I mean, these deals are 7, 10 plus year deals. So there's so much that I'd say we're still learning, and we're still growing and making some decisions. When you're thinking about principles, in 2021 to 22 to 23, we saw a lot of people making buying decisions and throwing basic principles out the window. And that concerns us. We are watching that constantly. And what I mean by that, basic principles of, okay, is this a perfect location? Like, is this an awesome location? And if it is, that's going to be a big checkbox for us. We just saw people starting to make decisions that, hey, the deals make so much sense, it doesn't really matter where you buy. We're going to go and buy in maybe C areas. Mm-hmm. And so I think you always have to come back to basic principles when you're buying a property, and never get away from that, because it's easy to get into a deal, to see the returns and say, man, these returns are so much better, but the location is not as great. And to start to make decisions based off returns rather than good foundation of basic principles.
Yeah.
So that might be an area that I've seen in this industry where, who knows, long term they might still be successful. I think we're seeing some pressure in the short term.
Yeah.
So I think you can never, ever get away from basic fundamentals.
If you were to look at the flip side of that, there's a lot of sellers that are wanting to move their properties or get going there. What would you say are the mistakes to avoid if somebody is looking to sell a property?
Yeah, I mean, this is really clear for us. We've bought, and seen properties be purchased that were really poorly managed. And look, like, there is opportunity when you buy something that's poorly managed to go and change it and right the ship. And that can be done. However, it is very telling if a seller very poorly manages a property, especially of this size. If you're going to go buy an $80 million property that is very poorly managed, you better be writing into your underwriting that you're going to have some headwinds for 2 to 3 years of trying to right the ship there. So when we're analyzing it like a value add property, for instance, where we think we can go and increase rents through renovations and maybe a little bit of operational efficiencies, well, we look really quickly at how well has the seller been managing the property. And if they've been managing it extremely poorly, it's a huge turnoff to us. We don't want to go, even though there might be some great upside and some potential, we just have seen and had experiences and seen others have a lot of more bad that comes from that than good. So operational efficiencies might look different to us rather than going after like one of the tall tale signs is go into a maintenance room in an apartment complex and see how well organized that maintenance room is. And that's going to tell you a lot about what it takes to run that property or how they've been running that property.
Same with buying a single family home.
Yeah.
That's so interesting. So but it's obvious to you. There's some telltale signs.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, we want to work with professional sellers. We want to be working with people that we're going to buy from time and time again and building relationships there. And we spend a lot of time and money to foster those relationships.
This takes us a little bit back to the first part of our conversation where you're finding these people to develop with. A common trait amongst some of the most successful people, and I define success in this term as very successful in their career and being really influential, but they also have the right character mix. Like they're somebody that's worthy, that's aspiring to be like. Typically, they're a lot more humble, and people generally admire them when they know their character at a deeper level. Those are the kind of people that are the most interesting and the most effective, I would argue, but they're the hardest to find because they don't usually seek for attention. They don't really care to to spend time with people outside their circle because everybody wants a piece of their time. They're hard to find, but when you can find those people, they are the greatest value add when it comes to a relationship. There's people like that in the investing world as well, where they don't need to move their money. They have money to move, but they're only waiting to find good deals with good people, right? They're looking to find as another Buffettism is they'll find a great deal at a fair price, not a fair deal at a great price. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So how do you find those people that are hard to get but that are going to be the best partners in the future?
It's a really good question. I think part of it just comes to sticking to who we are. And look, we're building a company right now where when I came into Fox was already built. Like I benefited so much from the experience that had already been given, the culture that was already being created. And yeah, we grew and added to that. But I walked into an organization that was highly efficient and was already attracting the right type of people.
Yeah.
And now we're in a spot where we're kind of doing that again. We're trying to build an organization, but from the scratch of building our employees and teaching them leadership skills and trying to help develop them personally and build a culture that's associated with our new company. And so what I'm learning is the more we focus on those types of things, we're going to attract the right people that want to be along for the ride with us.
Like a magnetism kind of a thing.
Absolutely. Light attracts light, right? And if we want a certain type of people, it's usually because that's what kind of people we are. And so I would say, we are just working extremely hard right now to try and build a company and a culture and an organization that attracts the right type of people that we want to do business with. That was really important as we were starting this company is we want to go and do business with people we like. We want to have as little amount of drama as possible, which there's always drama when you're building businesses. But we want to choose the people we're working with. We want to choose the partners. And there have been times that we have just completely ignored or walked away from having somebody fund one of our deals because we just didn't believe the partnership would be in line with our vision and our hopes.
If you're sitting down with somebody, whether they're a potential investor or employee,
yeah,
do you have any questions that you like to ask them that give you good insight into who they are and what they believe?
No, it's a good question. I just like to try and not let people get off the hook. A lot of people ask questions and they give an answer and then they move on. I like to try and dig a little bit more. That seems to help because then you can really get their true thoughts and true personalities out. That helps because ultimately, like, I want to know who this person really is. I don't want to know who they are in an interview or, before we make a deal happen. Like, I really want to know what they're going to be like.
Yeah.
And so the quicker you can get to who they really are, the better decisions I think you can make on how you're going to proceed in the immediate future.
Can you give me an example of how you would do that?
Yeah.
I'd love to just get a little more insight on how you dig in and maybe the type of questions that you ask and how you think about it.
Well, like one of the questions I love to ask, especially with employees, is like, okay, if we hire you and you work for us for the next 3 or 4 or 5 months, what are we going to be surprised by about you, good or bad, that we weren't anticipating? And usually they might give you a little answer and then you say, but no, like really, like what traits do you have that are going to frustrate me? Just let's get it out right in the front. Like, how is this going to go? And so questions like that it kind of breaks down some guards, but it puts them into a mindset that they're like, okay, I'm not going to get in trouble if I say this because he's asking. You can start to learn a lot about a person from that. And you always know if somebody's always just so positive, they're always like, no, there's nothing. I mean, you're going to be disappointed how hard I work, or things like that.
So then what would your follow-up to that be?
Oh man, I would just give them a hard time and not say very much, but be like, okay, but really, like, what am I going to be disappointed by? I don't know. I think it's a good question. I think you can learn a lot about people by watching them, by trying to read their body language and understand who they are. And look, one of the things that's so fascinating is we all have a lot of insecurities and things that we struggle with in life. Nobody's immune. As we get older, we don't necessarily lose those. We just get bigger. And we might get better at hiding some of them.
Sure.
But all the basic insecurities and problems that each of us deal with, everybody has. And we just get older and, have those with us longer. And so being able to, and look, those things aren't bad. Like, we're still going to do business or hire someone or whatever it is with people that have those, because we all do.
Yeah.
But understanding who they are is important. I believe that you're so much better to have somebody on your team and have them be with you than against you.
Sure.
So overall, like the overwhelming majority of the time, I just believe you can do more with good people than having good people against you.
Yeah.
And so it's probably worth some sacrifice in some areas to have people be a part of an organization or part of a team that you're going to all go win together than having them be fighting against you.
On that same topic of people, why do you think so many people know all the right answers, but they don't live true to that knowledge? We were talking about this a couple months ago, but in relation to a few people in the industry. But I had asked you, you meet with all these really influential people or firms that represent family offices, and everybody says the same thing. You go and the quest for knowledge is not very hard, because it's always like, be humble, save your money, work really hard, respect and love people. But so why is there an epidemic then of all of these issues where there's not prudence, there's not restraint, there's poor relationships, where deals constantly fall through dishonesty or low integrity, but everybody knows the answer?
I don't know if I have the answer for that. I maybe have some ideas or thoughts, even just looking maybe at myself personally, where I sometimes fall in those areas. Usually, people just fall to whatever's the easiest thing to do at the time, often. Dallin, I don't know. Look, discipline is really important, and I think priorities in life are really important, and making decisions and guiding your life by priorities is kind of a hack that a lot of people don't live by. So I don't really know, but I'll maybe just speak for myself and how I've gotten better in some of those areas. Look, like I'm a strong believer that if I can keep my priorities straight, that I'll make better decisions and that my judgment will get better, and I'll ultimately maybe live a little bit truer to what I say. So priorities wise for me, my number one priority is to God, above my wife, above my family, above my partners, my business. My number one priority is to God. And that has started to shape, over my lifetime, the decisions that I make. So for instance, if I say God is my number one priority, but then a third party looks at my life over the last 7 days and labels a priority higher than that, I'm probably missing the mark. So what do? Well, man, I'm not perfect at this, but on a daily basis, if God is my number one priority, can I put him literally first in my day? And so I've tried to do that. The first things that I do in my day involve God. And that's had a dramatic impact in my life. And what has that meant in other areas? Well, normally I would go and exercise first in my day. And so what does that mean? Well, exercise in some ways has fallen by the wayside, because my higher priority is to my relationship with God. And ultimately, I think those are somewhat connected in some areas, so I try and do good there. But where exercise was first in my day, it is not first in my day anymore.
Yeah.
And so I think you can practically insert into your life your priorities that ultimately will help drive your decision-making and your judgment and the choices that you actually make when no one's watching. And anyway, so that's maybe something I've tried to do in my life.
Are there any other key pieces of business wisdom that you feel particularly passionate about now that you've started your own venture? You have been the key figure, one of two key figures, building the culture, hiring the people, doing all the nuts and bolts of finding an office space to closing huge investment rounds. Are there any other nuggets of wisdom that you just feel really passionate about now that you've learned it from that side of the table?
extremely passionate about. I'm not exactly sure. I probably could come up with some. One of the things that's been interesting is I actually taught this at our last company to a lot of our employees. I would say things like, look, you can either play now or you can pay later. Or you can pay now and you can play later. Like I would teach that often. And I have learned and realized that that's actually incorrect. You don't pay now so you can play later. What I mean by this is like, especially when you're looking at leadership and developing yourself personally, you pay now, which really means you do the hard things now, not so you can play later, but so that you can make harder decisions later. So you pay now, you do the hard thing now, so you can make harder decisions later, which ultimately lead to making the hardest decisions even after that. So that's been a really interesting paradigm shift for me, where I felt like I was around so many people that were like, if I can just make enough money, I can live an easy life. Or if I can just find enough success and fame, later it will be easier. And don't get me wrong, some people do that path. But what I've realized for myself is I made hard decisions in the moment to develop my ability to make hard decisions so that later I can have larger impacts. And that's still in development. And who knows where we'll go. But I think I've changed in some of my early thoughts on how to make decisions. That, look, you don't make a hard decision now so you'll have easier ones later. You make the hard decision now because it's the right decision to make.
Yeah.
And so later you'll have greater capacity to make hard decisions.
That's so good. That rings true. Kevin Kelly, the founder of Wired magazine, he's quoted for saying the reward for good work is more work.
Yeah.
Like that's really what it is.
Yeah.
And when that's so interesting, because that is what is sold to everybody. And that's, I've definitely been there. Maybe you were there when they were talking about real estate, that the idea is I can get this much passive income, or I can have this size of a nest egg, or set myself up in this fashion so that I never have to work a day in my life again.
Yeah. It's more about, okay, well, now that you have more time, what are you choosing to do with your time?
Yeah.
And that's really important. Like, it actually stems to another principle that I think is really important, which we talked on earlier a little bit. But when you look at service and giving service to other people, are you giving service to be seen in the eyes of those people that you're giving service for? And how do you actually approach serving? Because look, like if you serve in a public way, what happens to the receiver of that service? Who do they think? They think you. And that might feel good and that might be exciting, but who should they be thinking? Should be thinking God. Because ultimately, everything that we're given isn't ours. So why do we serve in private? And why do we serve not to be seen of men? Because the receiver of what has been served ultimately looks to God as gratitude rather than to the giver, and which he ultimately is the great giver of all that we have. So that principle of making decisions and how you make decisions, well, when you have more opportunities to give and to serve, why are you making those decisions? And it's something I ask myself often and have conversations about. But I just believe that when you make hard decisions, you sacrifice and you move yourself forward, it gives you the opportunity to make harder decisions, but also it might free up some time. And ultimately, I just believe in good leadership development and personal development, that free time should be then doing some of the more important or harder decisions or harder things that you can do.
Yeah. That is about doing what you are put on this earth to do. That's so interesting. It just feels good to me, and that's the purpose of what I really want to put out there in this podcast. Is we're identifying people across different industries, different belief systems, different parts of the world, and at different levels of success that are speaking, that are exemplifying that truth. That they want to stay active and engaged. They want to serve a purpose higher than themselves. The success, the impact, their legacy is all put to the service of something bigger than themselves.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, Christian, that is the only way.
Yeah.
I don't think there's any other way.
Yeah. It's through, like, if you look at this, look, you go and live leadership principles so that you can then go care for others and teach them leadership principles and make invitations to an even greater number of people to have an impact and to take another step in their life.
Mm-hmm.
And then all of a sudden you're in a spot in leadership where you can actually cast a vision that's meaningful and impactful. And I think that's an interesting, maybe 4-step process of you first live it, then you can care for others and help them. Then you make these invitations, and then you can cast this great vision. So leadership to me, and even business is just a medium of leadership.
Yeah.
Right. And ultimately leadership is just a medium of living the gospel of Jesus Christ and developing ourselves and making sure that we are progressing. So like I said, all things are spiritual before they're physical. And I just believe that if you can make and apply spiritual lessons and steps in business, it's going to have a greater impact on as many people as possible to try and hopefully help them go from mediocrity to competence, from failure to achievement.
On that topic of people, I want to conclude with the same final question I give to all of my guests, and that's, what's the kindest thing anyone's ever done for you?
My first thought was Sarah marrying me.
That was kind of her. Thank you, Sarah.
That was very kind, because here's the truth. She sought me out. She made it really easy for me. And I'm so glad that she married me. I mean, the kindest thing anyone's ever done for me is Jesus Christ dying for me. Absolutely. I mean, I make so many mistakes, and I'm so fallen. And the things that matter most are the things that last longest. So the kindest thing anyone's ever done for me is Christ dying for my sins and giving me the opportunity to follow him and have faith in him. Man, I don't know if you can top that in kindness. So I don't know. I probably could come up with some other things that are more applicable, but that's pretty high on the list for me.
I'd say. Well, thank you for coming on.
Yeah, thanks,
I enjoyed the conversation.
Yeah, it was great to see you.
If you enjoyed this episode, please follow the podcast on Instagram at the handle Momentum Theory Pod, where I'll be announcing new episodes weekly, as well as sharing my top takeaways from every conversation. As always, I invite you to please share this episode with anyone you think could benefit from the conversation. So long for now, and thank you for tuning in.